You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. It might seem obvious to you that many actors and musicians and other celebrities have stylists, people who decide what rich and famous people should wear on red carpets, people who help stars convey their personality and even their values without saying anything at all. But Bill Gates? He has a stylist too, a team actually, with a Gates-sized mannequin to match. His sweaters, button-downs, and dark-framed glasses are meant to portray somebody calm and approachable, current and former employees say. That's all according to a new story in the Wall Street Journal. But maintaining Gates' image has become more and more difficult. Persistent inquiries about his relationship with the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein hang over Gates' public persona and his major philanthropic efforts with the Seattle-based Gates Foundation. That foundation is one of the largest in the world with an $89 billion endowment. Let's talk more about all of this with Emily Glazer. She is an enterprise reporter with the Wall Street Journal. Her latest story details the mounting backlash against Bill Gates over revelations in the Epstein files and the ways Gates' team has tried to manage his image over the years. Emily, thank you very much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Libby.
So before we get to some of these image management details, because again, the mannequin, the Gates-sized mannequin really stood out to me. I want to talk about the reasons that Gates' image right now is falling apart. I want to just first play a little tape here. This is actually Gates talking with the editor-in-chief of the Wall Street Journal about his relationship to Epstein in January 2025.
Well, Jeffrey, in retrospect, I was foolish to spend any time with him.
He went on to say that Gates thought he could enlist Epstein's help with global health philanthropy, but that help never materialized. So, Emily, you've been reporting on Gates, his foundation, and Epstein for a while now. Can you talk to me about what did Gates say at first about his relationship with Epstein, and then what do we know now about the extent of that relationship that we didn't before?
So it's been roughly 5 years that I've been reporting on and off about Bill Gates and his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, Libby. I honestly keep getting pulled back in. And Gates and his lieutenants for many years have said that his rapport with Jeffrey Epstein was strictly about philanthropy. What we have learned in late January of 2026, this year, when the DOJ Epstein files were released, another batch, is that their relationship went so far beyond philanthropy. We now know, again, based on documents, that Jeffrey Epstein traveled with and introduced Bill Gates to the head of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee. We know that Jeffrey Epstein was involved with Bill Gates and others in negotiating different exit packages with Bill Gates's closest advisors, including 2 different executives from the Gates Foundation. And we also have seen photos of Bill Gates with women whose faces are redacted, which Gates has described as Epstein's assistants that he didn't speak with. Those are just a smattering of some of the materials that have since been released. And Bill Gates has now had to respond to what these are in a way that he hasn't had to before.
There's a lot of embarrassing stuff in some of those emails, especially the emails that Epstein seems to have sent to himself as possibly a scheme to blackmail Gates at some point over, really personal, embarrassing details about affairs and prescriptions and things like that. But to be clear, nothing illegal has come out about Gates's relationship with Epstein, right?
No, not at this time. There are some questions. The emails that you're referring to, our reporting shows that was in the voice of former Gates Foundation executive Boris Nikolic, who was a longtime executive at the Gates Foundation and also worked for Bill Gates's private office. And one email alleges that Bill Gates had contracted a sexually transmitted disease, and they wanted to surreptitiously give antibiotics to Bill Gates's now ex-wife, Melinda French Gates. I'm obviously not a lawyer. I've been told that giving medicine to someone does fall into a category that may not be legal. Again, I'm not exactly the expert. I will let any lawyers decide on that. But to be sure, Gates's people have said that is false. We know from our reporting that when Bill Gates faces congressional questioning on June 10th, that aides of Congress members have told people that they plan to ask about that and those emails specifically. So it could very well come up.
So in your reporting, as all these details are coming out, you list some of the ways that Gates's former associates have been distancing themselves from Gates. Warren Buffett is really a key example here, but even the company that he co-founded, Microsoft, stopped him from hosting the dinner that he usually hosts in association with the big annual CEO conference at Microsoft. What kinds of social and professional consequences did you find in your reporting that Bill Gates is experiencing because of the Epstein revelations?
Libby, those two that you mentioned, Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett, and then separately Microsoft, were most shocking to me. But those are only two of several examples we report on. With Microsoft, it has an annual CEO summit, and Bill Gates usually hosts this, dinner at his compound in Washington State that I imagine your listeners maybe are familiar with.
We can see it from 520, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but from hearing about. And so this is a dinner I've heard about from CEOs over the years as one of the favorite things that they go to. And weeks before this was supposed to take place, Bill and his team heard from Microsoft basically saying, this isn't the right time to do it this year. So thanks, but no thanks. I will add that a Microsoft spokesman said that while it didn't work out with Bill this year, he's invited next year. To note, Bill Gates co-founded Microsoft. He was CEO of Microsoft for many years, and he was on Microsoft's board until 2020. So this is just not your average snub. With Berkshire Hathaway, the company that his longtime pal Warren Buffett led for decades, and where Bill also had served on the board for a number of years until 2020, we learned that at its annual shareholder meeting in early May, basically people advised Bill not to go. He wasn't technically disinvited, but there was that advisement, and he did not attend for the first time in many, many, many years.
That kind of thing happened also like in India at the AI Impact Summit, where Gates was there at a hotel, like ready to go and deliver a keynote speech. And then the government of India, according to your reporting, basically intervened and kind of encouraged him not to attend. I mean, it just seems like showing up, traveling all that way, and then being turned back that's a really big statement.
Let me set the stage for you with this one, Libby. There is a hotel in New Delhi, India, called the Oberoi. It is where some of the wealthiest, global leaders, billionaires stay. It's like not your average hotel. There is a symmetrical marble white staircase leading up to it, a huge wooden tree of life sculpture. And Bill Gates, that is where he usually stays. He's stationed there and basically waiting to receive word if he would be going to this dinner with the India Prime Minister Modi and French President Emmanuel Macron and a bunch of other business leaders who were involved in the India AI Summit, and ultimately was told not to go. Right before that dinner, there had been this back and forth with local Indian media and even the Gates Foundation, where his name wasn't appearing on the website for key speakers in local India publications. They had said that Indian government officials were reviewing his invite, and the Gates Foundation tweeted days before that Bill Gates will be giving his keynote as scheduled. So Bill's waiting at the Oberoi. This dinner does not materialize. And then one of his Gates Foundation, the country lead, the India country lead, receives word from the India government that it would be better for him not to give his keynote because it would be too much of a distraction from the focus of the summit, which is AI. And they left it to the Gates Foundation and to Gates's team on how they wanted to communicate that. It is, snub might not even be the best word, because to your point, he traveled across the world. That was not the only thing on his agenda. He visited other cities in India, but that was the main thing for that trip. And he was turned away.
And as you write, this is a huge fall from grace for somebody who had achieved really a pinnacle of social regard, just 5-10 years ago. Can you kind of characterize the achievement that Gates's image had reached before all of these Epstein revelations really started to make it crack?
For this piece, I really went back to 2019. That is the year that Jeffrey Epstein dies in jail. That is the year that more revelations come out about Bill Gates's ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And to me, that was kind of like the beginning of it. And there were some internal Gates Foundation documents that I reviewed that showed Gates's and Gates's private office, Gates Ventures, I should say, where there is this survey done by YouGov that shows Bill Gates was the most admired man. And it was not the first time. And they were really like applauding this and all of the hard work they had done to burnish his image and his reputation. And I think about that moment and then where we are now. I want to take a little step back to say Bill Gates has done so much for the world. I am not trying to take away from that. You mentioned at the top of this how the Gates Foundation's endowment is $89 billion. They are working to eradicate malaria, to eradicate polio. They're focused on maternal and childhood mortality rates, which have hit highs, and so much other work that they've done. I am not trying to take away from that, but we are shedding a light on a very carefully cultivated image over many, many years to take the Bill Gates from the Microsoft antitrust bad boy hearings to where he was in 2019 as the most admired man ahead of the Dalai Lama and the Pope. And now that new information continues to flow out about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, it sheds a light on what he and his team have said over the years and shows that they haven't been fully truthful with all those ties.
I think it's especially interesting for a Seattle audience. And for somebody like me, I grew up in the shadow of Microsoft, literally on the east side. You know, to Seattle audience members, Gates and Paul Allen, his co-founder, they're like the kids from Lakeside who made good, you know, and, you know, Gates's father was a famous and well-respected attorney and philanthropist in the region as well. And seeing, again, his evolution from this like cutthroat entrepreneur in the antitrust cases in the 90s and then shifting to this, you know, the giving pledge and the philanthropic efforts that really softened the image and made him, you know, into this like man of the world. I'm going to solve, you know, the world's problems. Again, as you say, rising in regard. And then to see, again, this like running up against an inability to get away from his past and some of the mistakes, as he's characterized them, that he made in his social and professional life. I think it's a fascinating evolution that you detail. And I think all of this, of course, as you've gotten sourced in his team and his current and former staff, it's been really difficult for the people who are trying to manage that image. Can you just kind of characterize what that machine looks like?
Absolutely, because we didn't even touch on the 2 Netflix documentaries yet, Libby, that also helped to show his image as this Mr. Rogers-esque, you know, global philanthropist. So to take a step back, there's the entire Gates empire. For the purpose of answering your question, I'll focus on his private office, Gates Ventures, also headquartered in Washington State, and the Gates Foundation. Each of those different organizations has internal polling teams of multiple people that work on measuring different aspects of both Bill Gates, and with the foundation, it's Gates and the Gates Foundation. I know from internal documents I reviewed that with Gates Ventures, they've looked at how inspirational he is, favorability around him, trustworthiness, everything is measured. And that even goes to them recognizing this fall from grace earlier this year. When that batch of DOJ files were released in late January, I reviewed a document that showed there was a more than 40% increase in, quote, critical news narratives, end quotes, about Gates and the Gates Foundation since those Epstein files were released through February. And one chart even highlighted large global news cycles following an interview Melinda French Gates had done when she talked about Epstein earlier this year.
Yeah, with NPR. Yeah, with NPR. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was after Bill Gates pulled out of that tech summit in India that we just talked about. And he had this town hall with Gates Foundation employees known internally as BG Unplugged. And they noted in this chart that it was a continuation of negatively framed news. I'll just note also with that town hall that he did, it was in late February. And it was described to me as him like really bearing his soul and like owning up to some of the mistakes he had made, and really like confessing some of his personal life to the staff of the Gates Foundation. His girlfriend, Paula Hurd, was sitting in the front row. One of his sisters was sitting in the front row. And he mentioned and acknowledged having affairs with two Russian women, which had been detailed in the Epstein files. Like, this was now public information. What was really surprising to me and to some people that I spoke with who kind of had a bit of disbelief at that admission from him was that it turned out in his divorce negotiations, there were allegations of more than 20 affairs. The reason why we include that in the story is that even when he was owning up to his mistakes, he still wasn't being completely truthful. And that is part of why we wrote this article.
Can you characterize how all of this has affected the Gates Foundation? Again, one of the largest philanthropic ventures in the world, the kinds of issues that they tackle, hunger, disease, just like an incredible amount of good work that has been done. How is the Gates Foundation navigating the discomfort that donors are feeling around this?
This is an interesting and tricky situation because what I have learned is that nonprofits are still taking and accepting money from the Gates Foundation, in part because federal funding has dried up so much. There's a ton of data showing this is a really tricky time to be a nonprofit and get funding. At the same time, our reporting shows that nonprofit partners have basically said they don't want to have public-facing engagements with Bill Gates right now. We report that there was supposed to be a South Africa trip in the works that through the Gates Foundation that was actually pulled down after that whole shenanigans in India. I don't know a better word for it. So they've had to adjust some of their own programming and certainly his travel schedule. And you can even see some of that frustration from a scene that we report on where the foundation CEO, Mark Sussman, had a town hall in early February, just a couple of days after that latest batch of DOJ files were released that detailed information about Bill Gates and a number of people that worked for him. And I talked to people who said they saw people crying in the audience. There were questions about what do we say to our partners? How do we do this work? And I'll just say from the many people I've talked to, that are tied to the foundation, those questions persist. I'm not saying I've talked to everybody. Of course I haven't. But I know that there are some really big questions that have been aired internally and certainly to me privately about the dichotomy between the incredible work that the foundation does to save lives and improve lives and the shadow that Bill Gates's personal decisions and his ties to Epstein and his own personal life and his various affairs. It's been difficult for that to be divorced or taken away from the work of the foundation. And a lot of them are dealing with that right now. The biggest question, will Warren Buffett give his annual donation to the Gates Foundation? It usually comes at the end of June this month. Warren Buffett has given more than $40 billion to the Gates Foundation. And he said on CNBC in late March that he isn't sure if he's going to give that.
We're looking ahead to the congressional testimony next week. That is not going to be on video. Will there be a readout of that, or how will the information from that testimony be released?
My understanding is that when people who have received these letters from the House Oversight Committee to participate in congressional questioning and voluntarily go, which is the case with Bill Gates, there is flexibility given. They were able to push back the congressional questioning for a few weeks. It was supposed to be May 19th, delayed to June 10th. And they did not have video as part of that, unlike Bill and Hillary Clinton, which was a very different scenario. They were actually subpoenaed to go. So this is voluntary. Bill Gates is not the only person going voluntarily. And my understanding is that there is a transcript that is shared days after, and there is also the ability given to his team to redact certain things. So we are not going to get the full picture. There will not be video, but you better believe I will be covering that. So stay tuned.
Emily Glazer, enterprise reporter at the Wall Street Journal. Her story is called Bill Gates Spent Years Crafting His Image. Now It's Cracking. Really appreciate your reporting and your time today, Emily. Thank you.
Thanks, Libby.
You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. And just a note, Microsoft is a financial supporter of KUOW, but we cover them like we do any other company. Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org or on your favorite podcast app.